Good morning. Today we're going to go over the second part of things that I wanted to talk about concerning resentment. And what I wanted to talk about today was what resentment looks like, or more properly, what does it feel like? What are some of the signs that we can look for that we have a resentment thought process, thought cycle going on within ourselves? So this is just going to be just a big list of things, and certainly this is not a complete conclusive list. There's at least dozens more things that we could talk about and add to this list. But just a few things that popped up that were very common for me when I was in that cycle. One of the things that I saw in myself was that I was really irritable. And that came, really easily to me, and was a dominant, emotion, for me. I found that I generally speaking, I try not to, put people down or think less or little of people. But in a resentment cycle, that's not the case. It's just the opposite. I was very into finding faults, with them. I was easily offended, and again, that's not my normal state. Being typically it takes quite a bit, and I actively manage that. But in that resentment cycle, that again, that's not the case. And very quickly we start to see that there's this pattern here, and that's something else that you can watch for. Are there things that you're feeling, things that you're noticing that are out of character for you? That's not who you normally are. That's not how you normally feel. And that's a good indicator that there may be some searching that you need to do and see why that's the case. Being unreasonable. I was very demanding and demanded a lot, and things that just weren't practical. I wanted a house that was immaculate all the time. Well, with 5 little kids, that's just not gonna happen. But in my thought process, that's what I wanted. I was very demanding of that. And we talked a lot in the first video about being entitled and feeling that that you deserve something, and that's just not the case either. Some other things, more some internal things, maybe to notice. I often had, kind of a tight or an upset stomach, and it was really easy for me to put this off, to, just, heartburn or something didn't agree with me. But this was a pervasive, pattern, something that just never left, that was always, there. Which can be another clue. Are there things that are off, that are different, but that are not running the course of of a typical emotion, where it's there for just a short period of time and then goes away. If you're having these negative things on a consistent basis, again, that's another clue that there's some work that needs to be done, and you need to do some exploration on why that's the case. Fast heart rate, fast breathing rate, was really common. Really tight muscles. One other thing that I want to say, about this, I can hear the question that people ask. Well, those could be anything, and that's exactly my point. Why I call resentment a psychological cancer, because it can masquerade as a whole bunch of different things, and it's really easy to explain it off as something else, as something that's not a big deal, as something that doesn't matter, when it really does, just like a cancer. A couple more things. I was unhappy, or it was hard for me to stay happy. And again, I know I sounded a little bit like a broken record, but that's not my natural state. I was unable to relax. I couldn't sit down and read a book. I couldn't sit down and watch TV. I couldn't sit down and just be present in talking with my wife, my kids, friends. I couldn't relax. It was hard for me to focus and stay in the moment and be present with anybody. My mind was always racing and running and going to something else because it was on the lookout and scanning for danger. Because it recognized that internally, in my brain and in that neurochemical environment in there was some dangerous things that were going on that I was ignoring and not paying any attention to. The last one I want to mention was, I don't know, what you guys feel like when you have a headache, or if you've ever looked at your face, when you have a headache. But I've noticed that I tend to kind of squint my eyes a little bit, furrow my brows a little bit, and I tend to frown a lot when I have a headache. And it came to me that that's the same thing that I do when I'm in that that resentment thought pattern. I'm even though I don't have a headache, but that same facial contortion is too strong a description. But that same pattern of muscles that are activated when I have a headache is the same pattern that's present when I'm in that resentment thought cycle, which that has its own implications and is its own interesting discussion, but we're not going to get into that. The next thing I want to talk about is superiority. Superiority by itself is always a damaging thing when you put yourself above somebody. And not just because you're above somebody, because naturally if you're above somebody, then it also follows that there's going to be somebody that's above you. So it cuts both ways, which is one of the reasons that it is such a dangerous state that the brain recognizes. But what happens if we couple that superiority with with other negativity, with malice, with anger, with being entitled or being deserving? Now we're starting to see, and very quickly we start to see people not as people, but we start to see them as objects. And what's the problem with that? Objects don't count. They don't matter, or at least they matter a lot less than us. And with this thought process, with seeing somebody that either doesn't count or counts less than us, it becomes really easy to justify bad behavior. And when we're on that slippery slope that is a resentment thought cycle, it becomes easier and easier to justify worse and worse behavior. And again, it all comes back to this feeling of being deserving and entitled to have your way, and to think that you're one, to think that you're right, two, to think that you know best, and two, to think that the world, if we want to get down to the basics, the thought process is, I want the world to revolve around me. I want my way. I want everybody to treat me the way that I want to be treated. And that's just a totally unrealistic thought process, and it's an unrealistic way to live, which is another reason that resentment is so dangerous. You're constantly in this state of I've been wronged, I've been mistreated, and so you're in this constant state, both with your thoughts, with your emotions, with the chemicals that are going on, that are being released within your brain and throughout your body. you're in this constant state of turmoil, and it's not a comfortable, it's not an easy place to live. It's not an easy way to live. So it's worth it to go through and examine yourself and find out what are your specific things that show up. What are some clues that your body and your thoughts and your emotions gives you that are signals and indicators that you're in a resentment thought process. And that's the start of the work of becoming aware of what it looks like, what it feels like inside of you. And start to do some exploration, start to do some some questioning, start to do some paying attention and some learning about yourself, so that you can be aware of what what your signs are. Another area of exploration could be identifying triggers, what things put you into that thought process. And the benefit of that, of doing that work, is once you've identified that you're in that mindset, that you're in that neurochemical environment, that you're in that thought cycle, you now get to choose. You can choose whether you're going to continue in that cycle, leave everything the same. You get to choose whether you're going to recognize that and try and actively suppress that and bury that, or you get to choose to be active in doing something positive and constructive about it. Now, just a word about trying to bury and suppress those negative things. In the short term, that may work, kinda. For some people, they get real practiced in it, and it can feel like it's working pretty well. But in the long term, burying and suppressing negative emotions is never going to help. It's always going to serve to do the exact opposite. It's always going to strengthen that negativity, in whatever form and fashion that negativity shows up and manifests itself. So it may be, again, on a short-term basis, it may be an adaptive strategy, but on the long term, it's going to cause significantly more harm and more problems than it would ever help. So it's not a process that I recommend, and I just throw that out there as a big caution for you. It's just going to strengthen those negative things and make you feel worse and make life harder for you. So then, coming to the constructive part of it, doing something on a positive basis to deal with and address that's the subject that we'll talk about on our next video. So thank you again for taking some time to listen and to sharing some thoughts and ideas about some things that are important to me and to all of us, because resentment is not an innocuous emotion. It's not an innocuous process. It has some major inhibitors and drawbacks for our lives, and particularly for our relationships. So again, thank you for for tuning in, for watching, for listening. Please, if this is something that that you enjoy, that you agree with, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, to drop a like, and I would thank you for that and appreciate you doing that. Thank you again for tuning in and listening. Take care. Love you guys. Bye.